Hello everybody and welcome back to Professional Diploma in Photoshop. Welcome to lesson number 6 of module number 1. Thank you so much for joining me once again for this lesson. Did you know that Kate Winslet, tired of being retouched, like in this over-touched photograph from Vogue from 2013, has now got a no retouching clause in her modelling contract? And I'm sure you're all aware, it's very rare now that when you look at a photograph on magazine covers that they have not been retouched. It's just part and parcel of the modern era. And when I say modern era, it isn't a new thing. It's been something that's been happening pretty much since the invention of photography. If you ever look at the old headshots of movie stars from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, they have also been retouched. They would have all been done through a darkroom, a much more time-consuming process than what happens through Photoshop. But certainly Kate Winslet paving the way for a change in attitudes towards retouching, particularly when it comes to magazine covers. So very relevant to what we're going to be covering in this lesson. So you're here with myself, William Eames, your course educator. Once again, as I said, thank you so much for joining me for this course. I do hope that you have been enjoying the lessons so far. We've had a look at lots of tricky, challenging things to do within Photoshop. We're going to change things up a little bit in this lesson by having a look at how to do object removals and how to apply retouching to a photograph, which it is a controversial enough subject, but it is also very important and very, very necessary skill to be able to develop within Photoshop. As usual, if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to us through Morpheus, so simply type in your questions, and you can also put your questions to the classroom. Hopefully someone there will be able to help answer you if Morpheus isn't doing its job. You can also reach out to us at support@shawacademy.com. And on this subject of retouching, be honest, are you guilty of retouching a photograph of yourself? And I certainly am. I've taken plenty of photographs of myself. When we're putting photographs of ourselves up on social media, if we're using Instagram, there's all these apps that we can use that, will make us a bit slimmer, will remove wrinkles, remove blemishes, and so on. And we need to be very, very careful when we're using these. We're all self-conscious. We all want to present I suppose, a hyper-real version of ourselves online, of what we would like to look like, and really, it's not accepting ourselves for who we are. And it can also be very, very difficult, especially when you're younger and you're looking at all these pictures of people that you admire, of your peers, and everybody looks perfect. But you have to remember that this isn't the truth, that this isn't reality, that it's very, very easy to make yourself look unreal, basically make yourself look unnatural. So it's really important to understand that when we are editing photographs of ourselves, that maybe we want to take out some lines, we want to take out some crow's feet, but we should try to present ourselves as close to reality as possible. So, as I said, a very controversial, a very tricky subject when it comes to Photoshop and retouching. And I think this is where, when we use this term Photoshop, that image has been photoshopped, that this is what we're really referring to when an image has been overly smoothed out, like the skin here on this model, where there's no wrinkles, there's no blemishes, but there's also no characteristics at all within the shot. And that's something to be very, very aware of. What's the difference between a blemish and a characteristic? Okay, so when we're retouching a photograph, we're going to want to take things out like pimples, like spots, acne, any stray hairs we may have. We may need to do some slight retouching to skin tone if there's too much makeup. These kind of edits we're going to want to make. But we don't want to take out characteristics. We don't want to take out these things that make us unique. So things like birthmarks, like freckles, moles, scars, anything else like that. We should leave these things in because these are what make us us. Okay, now if you've ever photographed things like weddings, or if you're photographed, like, even if you're doing kind of newborn photography, anything like that, your clients may have lots of requests about things that they'd like removed, things that they'd like taken out. And it's your job, and I would also say it's your responsibility, to manage their expectations. Like I said, take out things like pimples and spots and acne and things that they might be suffering from on the day. But you also want to try to convince them to keep these things that make them unique as well. So it's a bit of a balancing act. So just keep that in mind as we progress on throughout this lesson. Now, before we jump into Photoshop, let's just have a look at the healing tools that we're going to be using. So we can find these healing tools. The shortcut for the majority of them is going to be J. So we've got our spot healing tool, our patch tool, we've got our standard kind of healing tool, the clone stamp, and we've also got a red eye tool as well. And using all these tools together, we pretty much have any tool at our disposal that we need to remove unwanted objects within our photographs. Okay, and like every other tool that we use within Photoshop, each of these tools also has its own properties. So, with most of these are pretty much brush tools. So we're going to be able to change the size, the hardness of the brush. Again, we can change the kind of blend mode like we've seen with our layers. We can actually change the blend mode of these brushes. We can use content aware, which is incredibly effective, as we're going to see in a moment. And we've got some other options here available to us as well. And these are going to be pretty much right across the board, similarly with our healing brush. Some slight variations on the properties available to us. But really, the best thing to do with these kind of tools is to simply put them into practice, as we're going to see throughout this lesson. Now, the patch tool works slightly differently compared to our brush tools, as we kind of highlight an area and it'll actually fill in that area for us. Our red eye tool, which is pretty self-explanatory. If you've got a photograph that has red eye in it, you can remove that using our red eye tool. And our clone stamp tool, which is probably one of the more popular tools within Photoshop, a more advanced tool which will allow us to sample an area within a photograph and, well, exactly as it sounds, clone it and reproduce it in another part of an image, or even in another image. Enough talking about them. The best way to learn how to use these is to actually put them into practice. So let's get into Photoshop. Now, so I've got a few photographs open here that we're going to go through just to get ourselves familiar with these different object removal tools. And a little bit later on then in the lesson, we're going to build upon a single image. We're going to add quite a bit of retouching to it, and we'll have a look at how we can also apply digital makeup as well, which is a very useful skill to have within Photoshop. And actually, if you've this is where anybody who has any experience applying makeup in real life will actually have a benefit, because you'll see that it's very, very familiar. It's very intuitive. It is actually like applying makeup in real life in a way, as we'll see a little bit later on. But now let's dive right into this and get familiar with these different tools. And the first thing I want to show you before we actually get into using things like our healing brushes and our clone stamps is that we can actually use selection tools as well to heal and to remove objects within our photographs too. So if I come up to, say, for example, we'll select our elliptical marquee tool, which is conveniently already selected for us here. And I just highlight one of the pimples here that I want to remove. What I have it selected, if I come up to my fill option within edit, and indeed you can also just right click or command click as well. If I go to fill, now we've seen this before, we can fill it in with a foreground color, background color, etc. But we also have this one called content aware, and content aware will basically take what's around the selection and use it as a, I suppose, a fill, exactly what it says, to fill in this area. So let's see what happens when I choose content aware. We'll just go with our standard normal mode. We do have lots of different blend modes here as well. Like we've seen in the previous lesson, we've got 100% opacity, and if I click OK, it's gone. Absolutely insane. It's no matter how many times I do this, I just can't believe just how quickly you can just get rid of these kind of things. So we can just keep doing that. We can keep just right clicking, go to fill, content aware, and again it's gone. Okay, so it's a very, very fast, very, very quick way that we can do object removals, and it's great for things like this, for things like spots and so on. You know, it can get a little bit more awkward if we're trying to remove large objects, you know, within our photographs. That might require a little bit more work, but you know, it's a really, really good thing for making these kind of small, quick adjustments. Okay, so that's our content aware tool, and already everything is looking much cleaner there. Okay, so that's where we can begin. Okay, and of course you can do this using whatever other tool you want when it comes to selection tools. So you can use your lasso tool if you want to as well. You can just right click again and fill that in. You can use your quick selection tool. Any of the selection tools have this option available to them. So really, really cool and very, very useful. But we will leave that one there for now, and let's have a look at some of our other tools. And let's see, we'll pick something a little bit more straightforward. So let's work on this photograph here. Now, so in this image, what we'll do is we'll have a look at how to use our clone stamp. Okay, so if we come down a little bit through our toolbar, so here we've got our healing tools. These are all J. So you can just right click or command click. So we've got spot healing tool, healing brush, patch tool, content aware move tool, which we'll have a look at a bit later. An interesting one. It's a variation of the content aware we just had a look at. But we come down a little bit more again, and we come to our clone stamp tool, which is S. And the clone stamp tool has, again, it's been in Photoshop for a very, very long time. It was available before our healing tools. And the clone stamp will basically sample one part of the photograph that we can choose, and it'll replicate it then again wherever we decide to locate it. So let's say we zoom in here. Okay, now, so it's not the highest resolution, but it's okay for now. And we will come to our clone stamp. Let's see, it's like a brush. So we want to just have a look at things like the hardness. So we'll just make a very hard brush at the moment. Everything's at 100%, and look, that's all fine for now. So I'll just increase the size of the brush or the sample area. And now if I just click on the photograph, it comes up with this message, which is could not use the clone stamp because we haven't defined an area, we haven't sampled an area that we want to replicate. Now you'll also see this happen as well if you've got multiple layers. Just ensure that you're actually selecting the right layer to work from when using the clone stamp as well. Basically, we need to tell Photoshop what it is that we're sampling and then where we want to replicate it. So we alt click to define a source point. So say, for example, I want to duplicate this little castle here. I hold down my alt key or my command key, I think if you're using a Mac, and then I click on it. Okay, so alt and click, and that's now sampled that, and you can actually see it there. You can see when I move the brush around that we now have this sample of the castle here, and I could, for example, just pop it in there beside it, and I could just click on it and it's there. Okay, now it's not perfect, you know, it definitely needs a little bit more refining. Okay, and I mean there's better ways of duplicating this, as we've seen in the previous lesson. The selection tool would be the better way to do this, but I just want to show you exactly what you can do with this. Okay, so say for example we change that, we go alt click on the seagull here, and I want to put the seagull somewhere else. Again, I'm just just clicking around, and I can add in as many seagulls as I like. Okay, so that's what the clone stamp tool does. and we can use this again for object removal. So let's move across the edge of the photograph here, and we've got lots and lots of people here in the shot. Alright, so say we want to remove some of these people. So I'd make my brush smaller. I'm just using the square brackets here to make the brush smaller. I press Alt click to sample just this horizon here, and I can start moving across, and I can start deleting some of the people. Now, for this to be very effective, you should always try to sample as close to the area that you want to remove. So you want to kind of go beside the area, so you're going across here like I'm doing just there to remove those people. And you also want to try and avoid clicking too much, because the more you click, the more you're going to see the clone effect. And this is also where you're going to want to modify the hardness of the brush. So actually, sorry, just clicked on blend modes. Again, we've got the different blend modes there. I typically use normal there. You can change the opacity, but you can also change the hardness of the brush and go a little bit softer there as well. Again, just to try and reduce the obviousness of the clone stamp. And I think, like, you can see it very clearly there. You know, that's not particularly well done. And excuse me, when you're looking at images that have been, again, inverted commas, photoshopped, the clone stamp tool, I think, is one of the most overused tools for beginners. So you want to be careful with it. It's a very, very useful tool, but it's also one of these tools that's, you know, if it's not used correctly, it's very, very obvious that, you know, it has been used. So if I zoom out on this photograph, you know, these three castles, all these multiple seagulls, some of these removed people, it doesn't look right. Okay, so I just want to show you what the clone stamp tool is, but certainly this isn't the best case scenario of how you should use it. But we'll use it a little bit later on when we're working on our retouching a little bit more extensively. So moving on from that, let's move on to our next image here, and we'll have a look at the healing tools that are available to us. So the spot healing tool, the spot healing brush tool, the healing brush tool, the patch tool, content aware move tool, these are tools that we're going to be using very frequently when it comes to retouching. And let's start off by having a look at what the patch tool is first of all. Very, very useful tool for dealing with large objects like this leaf here. So when I select the patch tool, I have two options here available to me at the top. Well, first of all, we have our standard options here for also being able to add or to subtract from selections when we use the patch tool. The patch tool is this odd mix of selection tool and healing tool, as we're about to see. We also have content aware, and we have normal. We've also got source and destination. So let's just go with normal. Let's just go with source. And we'll go with our basic option here as well, and draw around this leaf. Let's just quickly draw around this. Okay, it doesn't have to be any way perfect at all. So when we draw that, we can then click and drag, and that you can see there exactly what it does straight away. You click and drag to a point that you want to fill in using the patch tool. It works very, very similar to the content aware tool. Very, very similar way really with the content aware tool, except that you get to choose exactly what it is that you want to replace the area with by using the patch tool. Now if I just Control Z and go back, we can also go destination as well. So destination is a little bit different. If I drag it, it actually cuts out the shape and it will blend it in. So we would be using it in a slightly different way there. So rather than selecting the leaf in this case, we would select an area of the concrete. Okay, so just a quick circle of concrete there, and you would drag and drop it over the section that you want to remove. As you can see there, not as effective in this particular instance. So you can variate between source and destination. Okay, you've also got the content aware option as well, which will just allow you to draw around it and will fill it in itself. So you've got lots of control over the patch tool. Now with our healing brush tool and our spot healing brush tool, we're going to have a look at these now in just a moment when we start working away on doing a little bit of retouching to our model. Our content aware move tool, very similar idea to the patch tool. So we'll just deselect our selection here. So we just go to deselect. Okay, we can choose our content aware tool, and again you're kind of clicking on around the image. So we just draw very quickly around our image here, and again you're just kind of clicking and dragging. A very similar kind of idea to the there we go. So you see it takes a moment there to work. So you're kind of clicking and dragging. So you're actually moving an object over, and then it will fill in the area that you've left behind afterwards. Okay, so a bit of an odd one there as well, but it's great if you need to move an object and then you actually need to fill in that space afterwards too. So that's our content aware move tool. Finally then, let's move on to have a quick look at our red eye reduction. So red eye reduction is really quite straightforward. So again, we come over to our healing brush tools and we have our red eye tool. So red eye is caused when a flash from a camera illuminates the actual blood cells within our eyes, which is why you get this. It illuminates the blood cells. So similarly, you know, when you're photographing pets and that as well, they'll also get white eye as well. And it's actually the back of the eye that's being caught up, that's catching the light. So the red eye reduction, really helpful to just try to remove that. We've got very basic tools here. We have pupil size and we have darken amount. Okay, so you just simply go to the eye and you kind of draw over it. Now I've done it very badly there. Let's try that there again. And as you can see there, it will fill it in. So not particularly great in that instance. And again, not particularly good in that one either. So you'd really want to increase the pupil size in this case and draw it over there again. Okay, it's not great. And I'll to be perfectly honest, I really think that a better way of using to fill this in is not to use the red eye correction tool at all. As you can see there, you can kind of just keep clicking and dragging it over to kind of build upon it. But you're much better off just using a brush and a layer and just correcting it yourself. Okay, so using a mask tool or a brush with a layer just to actually fill that in. But you can kind of keep going, and as you can see, if you keep going too much, you're actually going to desaturate part of the photograph, and that's actually all it's doing. It just desaturates the pupil. Okay, but it is there as an option should you want to use that instead. Personally, I never would. I'd stay away from that and just use the brush tools myself and just kind of correct it and fill it in myself. So we'll close all of them now for the moment, and we'll start to work on something far more complicated and use all of these different tools together. So let's start working on a brand new image. So we'll just go to open recent because I had this one opened up recently. And we have this high resolution photograph here to work away on. So this image was specifically shot for this purpose, for doing a little bit of retouching work. As you can see here, very high res, we can get in very close. Click 100% to get the maximum resolution on it. Any closer than 100% and you're going beyond its kind of native resolution. Still good detail there, but you can begin to kind of see some pixelation. So 100% is always a good idea when you're working on photographs to kind of supposed to see its true size. Now you're going to want to get used to using shortcuts here. So Z to zoom in, Z plus Alt or Z plus Command, and click to zoom out. Spacebar will select your hand tool to move around the image very quickly. And then our healing tools are going to be the letter J, or you can just click them over here on the left hand side. Now, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to duplicate this layer. Okay, we're going to be using a lot of layers in this image, and we'll start to remove some blemishes. Okay, so I recommend that being your first port of call. We're going to start using things like layer masks and that as well to help smooth the skin and so on, but it's important that you remove the blemishes first of all, because you're going to be reducing the opacity of these layers, and that will actually that can cause issues if you haven't removed the kind of blemishes and retouching that you want to do first. So we'll zoom in close again. We'll go 100%, the letter J, and we'll start by using just our simple spot healing tool. And our spot healing tool, very easily just click over the areas you want to remove. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the lesson, you want to distinguish between what are characteristics and what are blemishes. And molds and that can be seen as kind of characteristics, but it's also going to depend on the type of job that you're doing. You know, who the job is for, you know, whether it's for your own work or if you're working for a magazine, they may have very specific requests. Okay, so in some cases you are going to have to remove things like freckles and blemishes or characteristics, depending on what the nature of the request is, the nature of the image. So in this case, I am going to remove all of these just to kind of show you how it works. Now, here below, our spot healing tool wouldn't be great for an instance like this. You don't really use it for painting in like that. As you can see there, it's a bit of an issue. So we're going to use a different tool. And I think we'll try out the spot brush or the healing brush tool. And this works very, very similarly to our clone stamp tool. So you sample an area you want to work from. I recommend working just below the area you want to sample, and you can kind of just paint it in there. Okay, so you can see quite natural there in that case. So that's another way you can work. You're sampling the area that you want to use to make the change. Okay, so a little bit of work needed there on the nose. We'll go back to our spot healing brush tool, and we'll just remove that. So you can see also there's some stray hairs, things like that as well. So quite a bit of work involved in doing this type of retouching. You know, you will need to spend the time on it, but we'll just do very, very quick changes for now. Okay, so let's just zoom back out. You can also just go to fit screen to quickly fit things in again and switch on and off, and you can see there very, very quickly the changes that we have made. Okay. Cool, that's looking okay so far. Now we can see here as well, there's the eyes. Underneath the eyes we have some dark patches, so we're going to remove those. We'll use a slightly different tool here. Again, I'd say the patch tool is actually probably a good one for this. So if we come to the patch tool, we've got source, perfect. We want to just draw around the area. Okay, so draw underneath the eye there. You want to just drag it down. And let's just see how that looks. Okay, so it's softened it quite a bit. It's not perfect. Okay, so it might just undo that. Let's see if we try content aware, and again we'll just drag it and see how that looks. Well, that's even worse, so we'll undo that. Maybe just change the structure of that a little bit there as well. Bring that back to normal, and again we'll go again. Okay, so it's better. Okay, it's not perfect. It's a bit too soft for my liking, but it'll do okay for now. We'll go around the other eye here as well. We'll drag that down, and again. So we want then in this instance, what would be a good idea is to bring in a clone stamp. We'll increase the size of that. We'll reduce the opacity of it there a little bit there as well. We'll sample just underneath, and we'll just blend it in a little bit more. Okay, so now it's getting a bit too soft there. So we get, again, just bring the opacity down a little bit there. Sample that again, and we'll just blend it in. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it just takes away some of those lines a little bit. And let's just quickly on and off there. Okay, so we just zoom back out. Yeah, definitely needs a little bit more refining underneath those eyes. Okay, we've gone a bit too far. I'd even bring the opacity down even more. Let's just get in much closer here, because I don't want it to begin to look too unnatural, to look too smooth. Okay, so again, just sample underneath there, and just, there we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. So again, not perfect, but for the time being, it'll do. Okay. Actually, it looks okay. Again, needs a bit more work. That's all right. So we'll just go back to our Z key, zoom in, and we'll just fill screen again. So that's enough in terms of our retouching for now. Let's do a little bit more work in smoothing out that skin a little bit more. So the next thing then we're going to want to do is make another new layer. Okay, so we'll make another layer here. Actually, we don't need to do that because we can mask it instead. So we'll create a mask instead. So we'll go quick selection tool. Okay, so just quickly draw around the model. Just pop that back in there. And we want to right click, we want to select inverse, we want to draw around our edges here as well. And then we go into select and mask. Okay, so we want to switch on show edge. So we remember all of this from our previous lessons. We'll just bring out the edge there a little bit more. Just switch that off. We'll bring on our radius. Remember, we can increase the refine edge there. So we'll just go around the edges there a little bit too. Okay, just to fill in those areas that we're missing a little bit. Okay, again, it doesn't need to be hugely perfect now in this case. Okay, might just bring that edge down a little bit more. You can smooth out the edge, feather it there a little bit, and you can actually feather it quite a bit in this case because we are working with a white background. So, you know, it's not going to be impacted by our selection too much. And then we go to new layer with layer mask. Okay, so now we have a new layer with our layer mask. Perfect. So with this then we can start practicing out with our blend modes as well. And I'm actually going to, just before I do that, I'm going to duplicate that there again. And I'm going to switch off this mask. I'm going to delete that mask there too. Okay, and you'll see now why in just a moment. But coming back to our layer mask one, we can now go through our different options here. Sorry, we'll put that underneath so we can actually see it. We can go to our different options here with our blend modes. Now, as you can see here, they're quite dramatic. Okay, maybe a little bit too much. Screen isn't too bad, but the one I was going to go for was overlay. So go to overlay. As you can see here, adds quite a bit of contrast to the image. Okay, that's fine. So what we're going to do then is we'll go to opacity. We'll reduce it down, and this is just going to help to lift up the skin tones a little bit. Okay, just lift them up, add a little bit of brightness to them. So you can see there, it adds a little bit of contrast and a little bit of brightness there to the image. Okay, perfect. Happy with that. Okay, so then we come to the layer below here then as well. What I'm going to do here is we're going to add a blur. So we come up to our filter options and we go to blur, and we want to choose this one called surface blur. Okay, so you see when I select surface blur, it's quite dramatic. You can increase it very dramatically if you want to push it really to its limits. Things begin to get a little bit too smooth. That's okay, we can go very smooth with it, so we will increase it quite a bit. We'll go to about 20, 25 will do. Okay, so we click OK on that, and again what we can do here is that we can reduce the opacity of it. So if I come to the opacity again, I can reduce it down, and it applies a skin smoothing effect without being overdone. Okay, good. Now what it's also doing, of course, is when we've applied it, it has also applied the change to the eyes and to the lips, which we may not want. So in that case then, what we can do is we can simply click on a layer mask on that. So we just come down to the layer option, click layer mask, and we can then take away using our brush. Make sure I have black selected, go to our brush, and we can then paint around the eyes and just take away that selection, or take away that effect. Brings a little bit of sharpening back there, a little bit back to the eyes. And again, just go over the lips. If you don't want them to be smooth, you can just go over the lips there as well and bring that back too. Okay, so you can see we've got our little smiley face there in the mask. Let's just switch off that and let's have a quick look. So that was our original image. We've applied the changes there by removing some of the blemishes, add a little bit of softness there, quite subtle, and then we added an overlay just to lift the skin tones. Okay, so quite a bit of a difference already, and we still have much more to go with this photograph. So we need to do a little bit of work around the lips and still a little bit more work around the eyes. Now, one thing that's still bothering me is the softness underneath the eyes. I overdid it. I'm not happy with it, but thankfully there is an easy way to undo it. With my background copy selected, I can create a mask. So remember our mask option, we just add layer mask. And we can actually paint out the adjustment that we made there. So if we go to our brush tool, we check the opacity here, we'll go about 50%. I can paint underneath the eyes here and just reveal some of that darkness underneath the eyes again. Okay, just a little bit of it, not too much, because we don't want to completely undo the changes that we made. But it's just so it does look a little bit natural again, and not too that kind of airbrushed smooth and skin effect. So you can see there, you know, we've brought a little bit of it back, maybe a little bit too much, so we can just inverse again, add white and paint it back in there just a little bit. But it just helps to reveal some of those changes underneath, that kind of the naturalness of the underneath the eyes to come back a bit, and you can see the adjustments there on the mask. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to make some adjustments to the lips. So because we zoom in here, you can see they're a little bit cracked. So we want to just kind of try to soften them a little bit, and maybe even try to add a little bit of color here to them as well. Okay, so we have a couple of ways that we can do this. So we choose our quick selection mask, or sorry, a quick selection option. We just paint in there. Very, very quick one there. Okay, and we can go to select and mask. Now, before we actually do that, we could actually also right click here on this, and we can go to fill. And if we go through our fill options, it is actually also possible to add color this way as well. Okay, so this is a very quick way of doing it. So say we choose red here. We go mode, we can change the mode, and we can change the opacity. We'll leave it all here for now, and let's just see what happens when we click OK. Of course, it just fills it in as bright red. That's absolutely no good to us. Let's refine that though. Let's just try that again. So if we go into fill, we go to color, we've got color selected. Okay, we'll go with a lighter red. Okay. We're happy with that. We can change the screen mode, or the blend mode. So we're going to go with screen. We're going to reduce the opacity down here as well to about 40%. We want to preserve transparency, and let's see what happens. Okay, so a little bit of a different result there. Okay, so that is actually another way that we can do it. Now, it's not perfect because the selection just simply isn't great. So you can see there that if we zoom out a little bit, you know, it's not particularly natural, but it's an interesting way, and it is another option. But let's do it properly. Okay, so we're going to need to refine the edge here first of all. So we go back to our selection, select and mask. We're going to increase the radius here for the edge detection. We'll feather things out a little bit, and we'll try to reduce the shift edge here a little bit as well. Bring it in a little bit, and we could also use our refine brush tool here as well, just to refine things even more. Okay, so you can actually also minus that there as well to try and maybe take a little bit away from the bottom part of it too. We won't spend all day on that. That's absolutely fine. For now, we're going to go to selection. We'll select a new layer in this case. Click OK. And now we have a brand new layer selected. Okay, brand new layer copy selected here. So we can begin to make some changes to it. So if you switch off all the layers here, you can actually just see it on its own. And you can see the opacity is actually reduced on it here as well. So, you know, we can increase the opacity on that there. Switch on all our layers here again. Now, as you can see, when I switch on the opacity, it has an overlay applied to it. So we want to just switch that off. So you can just go back to normal. We've got a blank slate, a blank template to work from. Okay, so what we want to do here then is we want to smoothen things out. First of all, we go to our filter. We can select our blur options here. We've got loads of different ones we had a look at just a moment ago. Gaussian blur, our surface blur, smart blur. We'll have a look at smart blur. Okay, so that looks like that might work. We'll increase the radius on that. Now don't worry about really pushing it to its extreme in this particular case. Okay, we'll check the quality here as well, because we're going to reduce it. We're going to soften it down afterwards as well. So we click OK on that. It might just take a moment to apply that. Looks a bit overdone. Let's see what happens when we reduce our opacity. It's a bit better. Okay, it's not perfect at all. So maybe not the best one to use in this case, but it's a little bit better. Okay, so you can refine that a little bit more. Maybe we'll try a different filter. We'll come back up to our blurs because it's not sitting well with me. We'll try surface blur instead. Okay, so just wait for it to render. Reduce down the radius and the pixels there. Might just take a moment. Click OK. Okay, so that's smoothing things out a bit more. Now, it's also kind of flattened out the lips a little bit, so you want to reduce the fill down there just to bring a little bit of the light that's underneath through here again. So we could also change the blend modes if you like here too, but we'll leave our blend mode as normal. Let's just fit screen, so we come back to our Z, press the letter Z, zoom tool, go to fit screen, let's have a quick look. Okay, that is a significant improvement. Now what we want to do here is we want to add a little bit of color to this. Now we can do that again. We select our layer. We're going to go up. We'll select hue and saturation, but of course you could also choose things like color balance here as well. We'll go hue and saturation in this instance. We also want to right click, create a clipping mask, and then you can change the hue. Just simply scroll through them to whichever one you like. I think that will work. You can increase the saturation a little bit here as well. You can make it a little bit lighter, a little bit darker if you wanted. We'll go a bit darker. Let's see. Okay, that's subtle enough. So we'll stick with that, and you know, I'm happy with those lips for the time being. The final thing then that we're going to work on are the eyes. So we're going to do something a little bit different around the eyes. Now, one of the issues when it comes to editing eyes is actually selecting them. So up until now we've been using a combination of quick selection tools and all the other tools here with varying levels of success. But we're going to select the eyes in a bit of a different way. Okay, so just to give you an example, if I was to use the quick selection tool here, as you can see when I select them, it's picking up all the hairs, the eyelashes there as well. It's a bit of a pain to have to refine that. As you can see, it takes time. So we're going to do something a bit different here. We're going to go into what's called a quick mask. So below our swatches here, our background and our foreground colors, we're going to select this quick mask mode. Q is the shortcut for it. And you see when we select it, our layer goes red. Now, what I can do here then, when I've got a quick mask selected, if I go to my brush tool here, B for brush, again, we'll just increase the size of the brush here. We'll just paint around the area it is that we want to select. Okay, so you can get very, very close in on the edge. The red that you're seeing here is only an overlay, just simply a guide to show you exactly where you are painting in. So I'm just painting right around up to the edges. We come over to the other eye. We do the exact same here as well. Paint around. Okay, paint right in across the edge here. Done that a little bit fast. Doesn't matter. It's fine. We're a bit tight for time now at this stage. So when I've got the eyes selected there, okay, I exit out of the quick mask. And now I have a selection painted in. So it's like manually painting in a selection without the quick mask taking over and maybe getting it wrong. You can use a quick mask yourself. So when you've got them selected like this, as you can see, you know, the marching ants, one thing you'll have to remember to do is you need to inverse your selection. So you go back up to your selection tools, whichever one, you will need to inverse your selection. Select inverse, and then we can select and mask. Okay, so that looks okay to me. I'm happy with that. We're going to just go to a new layer. We'll just output it as a brand new layer. There we've got our eyes. Background copy number 5. So now we can do things like make adjustments to them. We'll go with quick brightness and contrast. Remember, we want to create a clipping mask on that, so we can now increase the brightness there, just to add a little bit of sparkle to the eyes here. Just increase the contrast there as well, just a little bit too. This is, of course, as well, where we can change the color of the eyes as well. We go again, create another clipping mask, go adjustments. Sorry, and we just change the color of the eyes there. Okay. Let's see, can we find kind of blue eyes there? We want to increase the lightness a little bit. Don't want to go too much so it doesn't look unnatural. So a little bit of refining there. That looks a little bit more natural, kind of natural green. So you can have a lot of fun with that. Let's just leave them kind of green now for the moment. Maybe just increase the saturation a little bit. There we go, changing the eyes there. As again, just when I said I'd leave them green. Okay, look, that's fine for now. Let's just have a quick zoom out and have a look. But you can see, you know, how effective that is. Okay, it definitely needs to be changed a little bit. Let's just make her eyes a little bit more natural looking. There's a strong green there. Reduce the saturation down a little bit. Maybe just make them a little bit darker. Okay, very, very cool. And you can do that with the quick mask. Let's just do one final thing then with it quickly. So remember, of course, you need to go back to one of your layers. Our background copy, will come back to this quickly. We're going to go back into our quick mask. We're going to select our brush. We're going to go and paint around the eyes. So we just go and zoom in. Make sure we have our brush selected here again. So shortcut B. And we'll just paint around the eyes because we're just going to add a little bit of eye makeup. Okay, so this is where, you know, of course, if you're used to applying a makeup, you might actually have a little bit of an advantage instead of just lashing it on, just like I am here now. But, you know, we're just doing this very, very quickly, just to give you an idea of how you can use this quick mask. Okay, so just go around there, around the bottom there too. Okay, zoom out very, very quickly. Okay, I'm sure there's some people screaming at their screens now at the way I've applied that. But look, you know, it's okay for now. So we exit out of our quick mask. Okay, we definitely need to inverse our selection. Remember that. And we can also then we're just going to create a new layer via copy in this instance. So just a new layer via copy, not particularly well done or anything like that. But we can go and we can then just use our blend modes to quickly add a little bit of an effect on the eyes here. Okay, so none of those are any good to us at all. The multiply is okay. Let's just reduce down the opacity there a little bit there. Okay, that's not looking too bad. That's all looking okay. And then finally, we'll just add another adjustment layer. So you can see how we're combining everything basically that we've been learning up to this stage. Our adjustment layers, our masks, our selections, everything kind of comes together when you start editing at this level. Okay, so let's see if there's a green. I'm not sure, like, I mean, think about what colors complement here as well. Your kind of complementary colors, red would probably work quite well here too. Let's increase the saturation there a little bit. And again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Okay, we're desperately out of time now at this stage. Okay, that's absolutely fine for now. So let's just fit that back into screen and let's just have a look at everything that we have done. Okay, so we're going to just select all of these layers together. We're just going to group them down into a layer very quickly. And that was our original photograph. Okay, and that's our edit. Okay, so it needs more refining with the makeup for sure. But like, it just goes to show you, you absolutely cannot in any circumstance believe your eyes when it comes to magazine covers and retouching. Now, just one thing to be aware of though when I say all of that as well is, of course, there's makeup artists and that out there as well that put a huge amount of work into using practical makeup to create extraordinary effects and everything like that as well too. Okay, so that's the before and that's the after. A lot of work there. We've hastily done, so you see that you will need to spend the time on it to get it right. You'll absolutely need to take your time with this recording as well and go through it step by step. It's a huge amount to remember. But for now, let's just jump back into our slideshow and finish out this lesson. Okay, so it's time now to have a look at what is coming up after Module 1 now that we are approaching the end. We've only got 2 lessons left. And looking ahead towards Module 2, this is where we take the skills that we've learned on in this module, things like our selection skills, our layers, our basic adjustments and so on, and we advance those. We take them to the next level. And this will allow you to enjoy your passion and to really enjoy using Photoshop. You'll master things like advanced selections. You'll be able to create GIFs. You'll learn how to add things like smoke, lighting and focus effects to further to build upon everything that you've learned so far. We'll have a look at how to add in dodging and burning into your skills. Very, very important, especially for photographers. We'll have a look at how you can really master brushes. We'll talk about brushes a little bit more in lesson 8, but there's a huge amount that we can do with brushes that we haven't even gone near yet. But most importantly, you learn when to use the right tools to achieve your creative potential within Photoshop. Moving on then, looking ahead to module number 3, this is going to allow you to master every single image, every single picture to get the absolute most out of them. And it also means that you're going to be able to get to a stage where you can increase your earning potential and use Photoshop as a way to supplement your current income. We're going to have a look at working with text a lot more, text and shape, which we haven't really gone into in depth so far. We'll have a look at how to add effects to type, things like 3D effects, how to use shadows and embossing correctly, how to take control of scale and perspective, especially important if you've got a desire to do any kind of architectural photography. We'll have a look at how to automate your workflow to allow Photoshop to do a lot of work for you, how to do really cool things like create panoramas and focus stack, which is great for landscape photography and for macro photography as well, amongst other things. We'll also discover the power of smart objects. You're going to unlock more skills, and as I said, at this stage you can start considering making an extra income for yourself. And moving on then into the final module, module number 4 is all about applying the finishing touches. We'll have a look at potentially at this stage you could start a new career for yourself and how you might go about doing that with Photoshop as your base. We'll have a look at how to use batch processing, where you can use Photoshop to process a large number of files together. So this will allow you to really help, if you're working on very large jobs, to automate your process. You'll have a look at how to start drawing, how you can start creating illustrations and sketches within Photoshop and begin to build ourselves a portfolio. And of course, to do that, we're also going to need to learn how to get our work print ready as well. And you never know, you may feel confident enough then to maybe even start teaching Photoshop yourself. So keep going, complete this course and you will see the changes. But it is important to note that time is running out. There is limited availability on these places on modules 2, 3 and 4. Due to the volume of students who take the course, we do have to limit space so that we can manage everybody and everybody gets the support that they need. So get yourself a place as soon as possible. Most students will take out a 6 or 12 month membership to give them enough time to achieve your goals or to achieve their goals, and it's 50% off, up to 50% off for a limited time. So remember, I mentioned it in the last lesson, our mission for you is to give you convenient, flexible, affordable and interactive education that's tailored to your needs. It's higher education at a lower cost, designed to help you to achieve your goals. Okay, so it couldn't be easier to upgrade. All you need to do is click the pop-ups in your student members area and you can simply choose whichever plan best suits you. Our 6-month plan is the most popular one, but the best value is the 12-month plan, which will give you that 50% off altogether. So let's have a quick look at what's coming up in the next lesson, and hard to believe we're on lesson number 7 already. And this next lesson is going to be all about colour and black and white editing. We're going to have a look at basic color theory. So this is learning about what colors work together and how to figure it out. There's a few rules that you can follow, which will make sure that you're always using the right color palettes for your designs and indeed for your photographs as well. But it is especially important for designers to understand. So, you know, if you are more on the design side of things where you're making logos, etc., within Photoshop, you are going to need to know this. We'll have a look at how to use the camera raw filter. So there's a very powerful photo editor within Photoshop, which is originally designed for editing camera raw photographs, but has been adapted as well now to basically edit any type of image or any type of photograph. There's a huge amount in it within itself, but we will have a look at it, how you can use it to add better color to your photographs and your images. And finally then we'll have a look at how to do a black and white restoration, how we can use our healing cloning tools, and how we can also then use black and white filters to enhance our black and white photographs and make them look brand new. So your challenge then for this lesson is to show an example of object removal, so something you've removed from a photograph. If you want to try your hand at retouching a photo like we did here in the latter part of this lesson, absolutely give that a shot as well. So we'll leave it there now for this lesson. Thanks once again for joining me, and I will see you all back again very soon for lesson number 7. So until then, bye bye.